He thought you'd always be there. He ignored the love, overlooked the effort, and assumed you'd never leave. But now that you've walked away, you're all he thinks about, because nothing haunts a man more than a woman who finally chose herself. When you stopped being the one who always called, always initiated, always made the effort, he felt it, even if he didn't admit it. You were the emotional glue, the one who carried the weight of the connection, and maybe at the time, you did it without even thinking. You just cared. You wanted things to work. You believed in the potential of what you had, even when he wasn't fully showing up. But people don't realize the importance of what's constant until it's suddenly gone. Your consistency became invisible to him, like background music he thought would always play, until one day the music stopped. In the beginning, he may not have noticed the shift. Maybe he thought you were just busy or giving him space. But with time, the silence became louder than anything you had ever said. And here's the thing, emotional labor, the work of holding up a connection, often goes unnoticed. It's invisible until it disappears. When you stopped reaching out, when you didn't follow up to check if he was okay, when you didn't double text after being ignored, that's when the real shift began. The emotional energy you once gave freely created a vacuum he didn't expect. Suddenly, he was left alone with the silence he used to weaponize. Your absence did something your presence never could. It made him feel your value. See, when you were always the one to apologize first, to smooth things over, to try harder, he got comfortable, not because he didn't care, but because he never had to try. You created a space so warm, so forgiving, that he mistook it for permanence. That's not your fault. It's what love looks like for people who care deeply. But when you finally decided to stop, to reclaim that energy for yourself, he felt it in ways you may never see. He started wondering if you were done, not because you said it, but because you didn't. You didn't chase, you didn't explain, and that lack of explanation said everything. That silence became his mirror. He started thinking about the times you showed up when he didn't. He remembered the way you made him feel seen, supported, wanted. And now, with no one to fill that space, he began to feel the emptiness he used to make you sit in. It's not revenge. It's not a game. It's the natural consequence of balance being restored. When you stopped giving, it forced him to confront what he had taken for granted. That's when the mind starts replaying old conversations, looking through old messages, and wondering why it didn't feel so heavy back then. The reason is simple. You were carrying both hearts. And now he's left holding only his own, realizing how much of yours he had without ever truly earning it. Men notice these shifts more deeply than they admit. They may not always express it clearly, but the emotional withdrawal you made hits hard. Not just because they lost someone who cared, but because they lost someone who cared even when they didn't fully deserve it. That's a rare kind of loss. And once they start feeling that absence, the regret kicks in, not just for losing you, but for not recognizing your worth while they had the chance. And by then, you've already transformed. You've redirected your energy back to yourself. You've healed parts of you that used to beg for his attention. You no longer need to be validated by his responses, or the lack thereof. You've realized that being available isn't the same as being valued, and that shift, that choice, changed everything. The moment you decided not to tolerate breadcrumbs anymore was the moment everything changed. Up until then, you had been accepting the bare minimum, convincing yourself that small moments of affection, vague promises, and inconsistent attention were enough. Not because you didn't know your worth, but because you hoped he would eventually step up. You held on to the potential of what could be, not the reality of what was. But deep down, there was always a quiet voice telling you that you deserved more. And one day, that voice became louder than your fear of losing him. That was the turning point. When you chose not to explain yourself anymore, when you stopped accepting excuses, when you refused to settle for almost. You reclaimed your standards. And with that shift, something powerful happened. You moved from being someone who tried to earn love to someone who simply expected respect. You weren't asking for too much. You were just asking the wrong person. And when you stopped asking, when you stopped showing up for someone who couldn't meet you halfway, the dynamic completely shifted. People feel it when you raise your standards, especially those who've gotten used to you lowering them just to keep the peace. He could feel it too. The ease, the access, the comfort of knowing you'd always forgive, it vanished. Instead of reacting, you responded with boundaries. Instead of begging for time, you created distance. Instead of explaining why you were upset, you stayed quiet and chose yourself. That silence wasn't empty. It was powerful, because it told him you were done performing emotional gymnastics just to be seen. The man who once assumed you'd always come back started to feel uncertain, not because you were playing games, but because you finally saw clearly. You saw that being available to someone who made you feel invisible was draining your spirit. You realized that no amount of giving could ever fix someone unwilling to grow. And when you set that emotional bar, when you stopped rewarding inconsistency with access, you sent a message louder than any argument ever could. He may not have responded right away. He may have pulled back further or acted indifferent. But deep inside, he felt the weight of your shift. Because the truth is, men notice when a woman stops chasing. They notice when she no longer tries to make them feel better about not showing up. And that absence, that emotional gap you once filled, becomes impossible to ignore. What once felt like control now feels like confusion. He doesn't know where he stands anymore, and that uncertainty forces him to confront what he never had to before: the possibility of losing you for good. You didn't need to prove anything. You didn't need to post quotes or send long messages. Your silence was enough. Your new standard spoke volumes. And when a woman who once bent over backwards suddenly stands tall and still, it commands attention. Not through force, but through presence, through self-worth, through the calm of someone who knows that peace is better than attention. Your decision to stop accepting crumbs didn't just protect your heart. It reminded him of the quality he lost. Because deep down, he always knew your value. He just never thought you'd wake up to it too. But you did. And now, he's left with the echo of what he used to have. Someone who loved deeply, gave fully, and expected so little in return. Now that you expect more, he has to ask himself if he's capable of rising to meet you. And whether he does or not, you've already won. Because you chose yourself. When you were always available, always answering right away, always showing up the moment he called, there was no mystery left. He knew exactly where you stood. There was no space for him to miss you, to wonder about you, to feel any kind of emotional tension. You were constantly there, emotionally and physically accessible. And while that might feel like love and consistency from your end, it can often be interpreted as predictability from his. Not because he didn't care, but because people stop valuing what they assume they'll never lose. That's human nature. We overlook what's always in front of us. And in love, mystery often keeps attraction alive. But then you stopped. You didn't reply instantly. You stopped sharing every part of your day. You started choosing silence over explanation. And that shift changed everything. Suddenly, the dynamic wasn't so predictable anymore. He began to wonder where you were, what you were doing, and more importantly, who had your attention now that it wasn't him. When he used to text, he got a reply in minutes. Now, there's a pause. That pause is powerful. That pause is where his imagination starts to fill in the blanks. And that's when you become mysterious again. See, mystery isn't about playing games. It's about having a life outside of someone. It's about not broadcasting every move you make, not making him the center of your world. When you become mysterious, it doesn't mean you become distant or manipulative. It means you create emotional space. You're no longer trying to manage his perception of you. You're not rushing to explain, to validate, to fix. And that quiet confidence is deeply attractive. It creates curiosity. It makes him lean in instead of pull away. Men are wired to pursue what they don't fully understand, not in a manipulative way, but in the sense that emotional depth, emotional layers, keep things interesting. When he can no longer read you like an open book, he has to pay closer attention, he has to think, he has to feel. And in doing that, he becomes more invested. He starts remembering the little things about you that he once took for granted. The way you laughed at his jokes, the way you looked at him when you were proud, all of that comes rushing back when you step into your power and stop oversharing. You become a puzzle, not because you're withholding who you are, but because you're no longer spilling yourself just to be chosen. You've slowed down, turned inward, and focused on your own energy. And ironically, that's when he starts turning toward you again. Because now there's contrast. There's space. There's intrigue. He can feel the emotional shift, even if you never said a word. You've stopped giving him front row access to every part of your heart. And now he's on the outside looking in, wondering what changed. That wonder is where everything begins to shift in his mind. He might not say it, but he's thinking it. He's questioning if you've moved on, if someone else has caught your attention, if you're happier without him. And those questions, the ones you used to ask about him, now echo in his mind about you. That's not a game. That's a woman who finally stopped trying so hard. And in doing so, she became unforgettable. Because mystery isn't about being distant. It's about being full of your own life, your own thoughts, your own joy. And when a man feels that you don't need him to complete you, but that you choose who gets close, that's when he starts chasing. Not because he lost control, but because he sees your value more clearly than ever. There's a silence that speaks louder than words, a silence that starts to echo in a man's mind day by day when a woman goes quiet. In the beginning, he may not think much of it. He might assume you're busy or taking space, but as the days pass and your energy remains distant, something shifts in his mind. You were once the person who checked in, who followed up, who made sure he felt wanted, heard, and needed. That presence gave him a sense of comfort, one he never thought would be taken away. But when you withdraw that emotional presence, he begins to notice its absence in ways he never expected. At first, his thoughts might be practical. He wonders why you haven't texted. He checks his phone a little more often, thinking maybe he missed something. He might scroll through your old messages to see where things left off. That's the initial phase. Confusion. He doesn't feel your energy, and he's not used to it. The silence becomes a question mark in his day, not enough to shake him yet, but enough to make him pause. As the days go on, confusion turns to curiosity. He starts asking himself what changed. He replays the last conversation, wondering if he said something wrong. He starts to feel the emotional gap, not because you caused it, but because you stopped filling the space. And that space is what forces reflection. When you go silent, you take with you the reassurance, the validation, and the comfort that he once took for granted. It's in this phase that he begins to miss you. Not just your presence, but your effort, your warmth, the way you made him feel seen without even trying. This is when his thoughts begin to deepen. Day by day, he starts to notice just how much you were doing, emotionally, mentally, and even physically. He might notice how his day feels duller without your check-ins. He might catch himself remembering your laugh or the way you responded to him in moments when he needed someone. He feels the loss not as an event, but as a growing realization that the energy he once felt from you has disappeared. Then comes the questioning. Now he starts to wonder who you're talking to. He wonders if someone else is getting the attention he once received. He doesn't have answers. And that lack of control begins to mess with his ego. It's no longer about just missing you. It's about realizing he's no longer in your emotional world. He doesn't know what you're thinking, how you're feeling, or whether you even care anymore. That mystery, that emotional detachment, forces him into discomfort. He's no longer the one who gets the soft version of you, the version that loved unconditionally. He might not reach out right away. He might try to act unaffected. But inside, the silence is working on him. It's teaching him something no conversation ever could. That love isn't about noise or words. It's about presence. And now, without yours, he's starting to understand the depth of what he lost. Every day that you stay silent becomes another day that he confronts his own actions or inactions. He has to sit with the fact that you're no longer waiting, no longer reaching, no longer hoping. What once felt like power, the ability to keep you on hold, now feels like regret. He realizes that the attention he used to control is no longer his to command. That's when the silence turns into a mirror, reflecting back all the ways he failed to match your energy. And each day that passes without your presence becomes a day he begins to understand your worth in a way he never did before. When you stop chasing a man who once had you in his hands, something shifts inside him that you might not expect right away. For a long time, you might have been the one running after his attention, the one initiating calls, texts, and plans, hoping that eventually he would step up and show you the love and respect you deserve. But the moment you stop, when you decide to stop being the one who always tries, it forces him into unfamiliar territory. Suddenly, the comfort of knowing you're there whenever he wants disappears, and that absence unsettles him deeply. Men often take for granted the consistency and availability they receive, especially when it's freely given without boundaries. They get used to the emotional energy being there, so much so that they forget how much effort it actually takes. When that effort stops, when you stop making yourself so easily reachable, he's left to face the reality of what losing that energy feels like. The truth is, men are wired to respond to pursuit, but not just any pursuit. They respond to the pursuit that knows when to pause, that understands the value of space, and that respects itself enough to stop chasing when respect isn't reciprocated. Your decision to stop chasing is not about playing games or punishing him. It's about reclaiming your power and self-respect. When you no longer bend over backwards to get his attention, it forces him to realize the value of what he had. That value wasn't always obvious when you were constantly available. It was hidden behind the safety net of your persistence. But once that net is pulled away, he's left vulnerable, wondering if you've truly moved on, if you've found someone else, or you're finally living your life without waiting for him. That uncertainty is what makes a man start to feel regret. It's not just the loss of your presence, it's the loss of control, the loss of the certainty that he could always call on you whenever he wanted. When you stop chasing, you're essentially telling him that you're no longer willing to wait around for someone who doesn't prioritize you. You're telling him that your love and attention aren't automatic. They're earned. This subtle but powerful message hits deep because it challenges the dynamic he's been comfortable with. Once you've stopped chasing, a man may begin to chase you in return, but this chase looks different. It's more deliberate, more thoughtful. He starts paying attention to the little things he ignored before. The way you smile, the way you carry yourself, the moments when you don't respond immediately, but instead live your life fully. He realizes that you're not just someone who waits in the background. You're a person with your own value, your own priorities, and your own boundaries. This reversal of roles often triggers reflection on his part. He thinks back to all the times he took you for granted, to the moments he could have shown up but didn't. He feels a mix of regret and admiration. Regret for losing what he assumed was always there, and admiration for the strength it took you to stop chasing and start choosing yourself. This mix of emotions is what pulls a man back because it awakens something real inside him, the fear of losing you forever. However, this process only works if your decision to stop chasing comes from a place of self-love, not desperation. When a man senses that you've stopped chasing because you're hurt or hoping to manipulate him, the effect is lost. But when he sees that you've chosen yourself first, that you're living a fulfilling life independent of his attention, it creates magnetic energy. He wants to be part of that life, not because he needs to fix anything, but because he respects your strength and independence. In essence, stopping the chase flips the script. It removes the imbalance where you're always the one reaching out and waiting. It puts you back in the driver's seat of your own emotions and choices. And when you do that, the man who once took you for granted can no longer ignore the fact that he's lost something incredibly valuable, someone who knows her worth and refuses to settle for less. When a man finally realizes your true worth, it's often because you stopped giving him the constant access he once took for granted. This isn't about playing hard to get or manipulating emotions. It's about stepping into your own power and valuing yourself enough to withhold what's been freely given. When you create distance, not out of spite, but out of self-respect, you trigger something deep inside him, the fear of losing you forever. That fear can be more motivating than any conversation, any promise, or any fleeting affection. Men are wired to respond to challenge, not because they want conflict, but because challenge awakens their desire and respect. When you stop being the easy option, when you make yourself less available emotionally and physically, you shift from being a convenience to becoming a prize. This shift forces him to reassess what you mean to him. Suddenly, the woman who was once taken for granted becomes a puzzle he's desperate to solve, a presence he wants back in his life. The absence of your usual availability creates space for him to feel the weight of what he lost. This isn't just about withdrawal, it's about creating an energy that says, I am worthy of more than your minimum effort. When you embody this energy, it's impossible for him to ignore. He starts replaying memories, remembering the moments when you made him feel truly seen and cared for. He thinks about the laughter, the comfort, the way you supported him even when he didn't deserve it. And now, with that emotional safety net gone, he's faced with the reality that those moments might never return unless he changes. The process can be uncomfortable for him because it forces him to confront his own shortcomings. When a man realizes he took your kindness for granted, it triggers a mix of regret and desire. Regret because he missed the chance to appreciate you fully, desire because he wants to fix what he broke, to regain what he lost. But the key is that this realization often only comes when you stop chasing, when you set boundaries, and when you focus on yourself instead of on him. It's important to understand that this shift doesn't guarantee he'll come back. It only guarantees that he'll feel your absence more intensely. Whether he chooses to return or not depends on his readiness to meet you at your new level of worth. If he's not willing to grow or change, the space you create becomes a space for healing and growth for you, not him. But if he is willing, that space becomes a doorway for a healthier, more respectful relationship. When you stop being available on demand, you also start to demand respect in how he treats you. You refuse to settle for half-hearted efforts, empty promises, or inconsistent attention. This new standard forces him to step up or step out. Men often respond to clarity, and when your actions clearly communicate that you won't accept less than you deserve, it's a powerful wake-up call. It's no longer about chasing love, but about mutual respect and genuine effort. This transformation also affects how he sees you. Instead of viewing you as someone who's always there, he sees you as someone with boundaries, with self-respect, with a life beyond his reach. That perspective shift can ignite a strong desire because it challenges the previous dynamic. You're no longer a backup plan or an option. You are a priority that demands effort and commitment. Ultimately, when you stop being the constant presence and instead become the prize, you shift the power in the relationship. You're no longer chasing approval or affection. You're inviting it on your terms. That's when a man starts to feel the real consequences of taking you for granted. It's in that space of absence and self-respect that he may come running back, driven by regret and a renewed appreciation for who you truly are. In the end, reclaiming your power by setting boundaries and valuing yourself isn't just about making him realize your worth. It's about honoring your own self-respect and happiness first. When you stop chasing and start living fully on your own terms, you create a magnetic energy that naturally draws the right kind of attention and respect. Whether he comes back or not, you've already won by choosing yourself, standing strong and showing that your love is precious and never to be taken for granted. That confidence and clarity is the real transformation, one that empowers you to attract the love and respect you truly deserve.